John Caudwell is the founder of the mobile phone retailer Phones for You. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
What do you make of all of this? Is the government campaign a good idea? Should the government be sticking its oar in, for the want of using a better phrase? Forgive me.
Well, I think it's a bit of a nonsense, and it's a bit of a nonsense when there's so many far more important issues. And the reason I say it's a bit of a nonsense is because the government should set the guidelines. Is it safe and reasonable to return to work? And then it's between the employee and the employer. And if the employer wants people back into work, then they're absolutely entitled to require that. But of course, a reasonable employer is going to take into account the personal circumstances of the individual as well, and the efficiency that they can work with at home. And if somebody needs to work from home from personal reasons and can efficiently work from home, why wouldn't a reasonable employer allow that? But I'm not a great fan of working from home. There are certain situations where it can be very efficient, but you'll lose a huge amount of benefits, as has already been said on this programme, training young people, the camaraderie, the sparking of ideas, the dynamicism of the office. There's a huge amount that gets lost in working from home. Working from home will never, ever replace an office environment. But having said which, there were two inevitabilities on the high street. And they've been inevitable for 20 years now, and as a consequence of the internet. The first inevitability is that there were going to be less people working in offices. There were always going to be that, and that was going to be an evolution. And the other evolution was going to be that there was less people shopping in the high street because online sales were always going to grow. What's happened with COVID is both of those things have turned into a revolution. And that revolution cannot be reversed. It may be partially reversible, but we are now forevermore going to see less people in the offices than there were before, and less people, less retailers able to survive and operate in the high street. And one of my solutions on that is part of my Caudwell pandemic recovery, which I call CPR, because it really is a situation in the UK where we are a very ill patient and we desperately need CPR. A part of CPR for me, apart from building apprenticeship schemes, attracting inward investment, making absolutely certain that we push renewable energy to the limit and probably try and attract brains from all over the world to come and run those businesses in the UK. Apart from those measures, a more detailed measure would be to turn the high streets more into residential accommodation, so that we don't have just purely and simply retail town centres, because that's never going to work long term. We have to now start thinking about how do we breathe life into our high streets and turn those redundant retail spaces into high quality residential areas, so we can bring people back to live in our town centres.
John, isn't there also the aspect of this that maybe people are staying away from city centres and town centres, but actually you're going to help boost local businesses? So, you know, not just doing online shopping, but for example, we've got a text here from Jamie from Southend. The money isn't disappearing from the economy. It's being spent locally instead of city centres. I think that's good for society. And after 30 years of commuting to an office in the city from Essex and losing 3 hours of my life each day, I intend to never go back and look forward to working more productively and helping my local community as I've done since the start of lockdown. So isn't it a bit of a stark sort of picture that's being painted there by you and many others, that, you know, either people go back to the office or the high street dies, full stop?
No, because I am not painting that picture. I'm not sure where you got that idea from. I'm not painting that picture at all. What I'm saying is there was an evolution taking place, which COVID has turned into a revolution. I'm not urging people back to work in the city centres. What I'm saying is that if an employer wants their worker back in the office, and that's what they view as the most efficient methodology, then the onus is on that employee to turn up and go to work as per their contract. That will help the city centres, but I'm not talking about helping the city centres in that way. I'm talking about rejuvenating the city centres by investing in them and turning a lot of office space and retail space into residential space so that we bring our town centres back to life. Because regardless of what happens now in encouraging people back into the city centres, they're never, ever going to be quite the same as they were pre-COVID, because there was an inevitable evolution towards lack of retail space and less people working from offices.
Now, I understand. I thought when you were talking about retail space that you were talking about, shops per se are going to die out because of online businesses. So, but if you could just take you back to sort of putting ourselves in the employer's shoes. I mean, we had a BBC study this week that said that of the biggest employing companies in the UK, there are so many that say they don't intend to try and get their office workers back full time to full office capacity this year. How difficult is it right now for employers, would you say, in the UK?
Well, it's extremely difficult, and especially for those that are running on half capacity, like restaurants and pubs and so on. It's extremely difficult. The challenges for everybody for the next few years is enormous. And unless the government does the right thing, there's going to be at least 4 million people unemployed, and the UK is going to be devastated. The economic situation is going to be dreadful, because those 4 million will cost the government an extra 50 billion a year in unemployment benefits, and there'll be probably over 100 billion a year in lost revenue. That's another 150 billion a year the government have got to borrow to cover the failings of the economy. And that's why under my Caudwell pandemic recovery plan, I am advocating that we borrow hugely over the next few years, not borrow to reflate the economy, but borrow to create jobs, to create inward investment, to make new businesses, and create an environment where we've got wealth created for real jobs, and not just pouring it into people's pockets. And that's vital, because unless we do that, we're going to have a real problem with government borrowing for the years to come. They're going to have to keep borrowing to pay for failure. What I'm advocating is borrow now to pay for success.
Sticking with businesses, though, in the immediate term, John, what have you said to your workforce about coming back to work?
Back in the office, because it's way more efficient. It's way more efficient.
So I'm sorry, the line cut out there. You've asked everybody to come back. Is that what you said? I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you.
Yes, I did say that, but my workers naturally came back because they want to be in the office. They know it's the right environment. They know it's dynamic, and it's the most creative and the most responsive. So, but that, please don't understand from that I think the only solution is everybody being in an office. There are situations and particular jobs where employees will be perfectly able to work from home effectively. But I don't particularly advocate that. Certainly not en masse, because the office is a great environment from every point of view. From people's mental health has already been said, stimulating ideas, and it's much more interactive, dynamic and exciting than just being at home and having to do the dog's meal or listen to the kids screaming, which is not very conducive to a efficient workday.
John Caudwell, founder of the mobile phone retailer Phones for You, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.